Well, are you bargain shopping for a home? And have you ever been curious about what happens at a property auction? Eldad Moraru of Long and Foster's here and has some tips and as well as some warnings about the process, which can certainly be tricky. So you have been looking to buy a home at a few auctions in the area. First of all, tell us what the experience is like. It's not something that any of us, are able to experience on a daily basis. And how does the whole thing work? It's foreign to a lot of us.
Right. So talking about how now is just such an amazing time to invest. I personally am looking to invest. And, I've been to auctions before. I figured let's revisit that topic and see if anything has changed. But they are advertised online, and typically they're all a little different. But oftentimes you only get about 2 hours, roughly, before the actual auction to go into the property. It's your first opportunity to look at it. You got to bring the flashlight, and you have about 2 hours to figure out what is going to be the right price to pay for the property.
So this is not at all for the faint of heart. You have to know exactly what you're doing. You have to come ready to go, and then you have to kind of pick a price in your head and get all this sorted out even before the auction starts.
Exactly. You got to show up with cash for a deposit, but yeah, you got to know what you're doing. It's definitely not for the inexperienced.
And how much cash are we talking here? Because sometimes it's a significant amount.
It all depends on the property and what the auctioneer and the seller set as that deposit. It can be as little as $1,000. It could be $25,000, but you got to have it in certified funds or cash.
But either way, you got to know the rules going in.
Exactly.
So take us through the bidding process once you go there. I mean, sometimes they're held at facilities, sometimes they're held at a courthouse.
Right.
It could be anywhere. Take us through the process once it gets underway.
Right. So the one I went to specifically, and you are correct, sometimes it is at the steps of the courthouse. That's the way they do it in Rockville. But the one I went to, you go into the property itself, you have a look. Then when the time is to begin, you're literally in front of this property on the street, on the sidewalk. The auctioneer stands there with a microphone so that everybody can hear him or her. And in some cases, they even videotape the auction so that no one can argue after the fact that, you didn't see that I bid or what have you. And then the bidding process begins. And, just like any other auction, you raise your hand and you just made a bid. So
yeah.
Don't scratch your nose.
Don't scratch your nose. Don't wave to your friend, or
Exactly.
or you could be out a pretty large deposit. And the biggest thing with that is knowing your price going in, because if you get caught up in the bidding or anything like that, then you could pay way more for a house than you wanted to. It's all about doing your homework again.
Right, absolutely. You don't want to get emotional. So you got to be ready to walk away.
Okay, so what happens? Everyone has these dreams in their head of a property that attracts no interest. They bid a very low amount on it. Can that happen? Can it really happen? Or is there almost always some reason why these houses will go for something that's close to a fair value?
Well, first of all, you got to understand there's two types of auctions. One is called an absolute auction, which means that no matter what the final price is, that property is sold. But in more cases than not, the seller has a secret reserve price. We don't know what it is, but if you don't get above that price, the auction doesn't go through. So my experience has been, unfortunately, that in almost everyone I've been to, somebody overly and sometimes grossly overpays for the property. So the conclusion, unfortunately, is that auctions, in my experience, are not a good place to find a bargain.
Now, if you are perhaps the most brilliant real estate investor or the most brilliant aspiring real estate investor, are there bargains to be had, period? If you do this exactly right and are very patient, go to a lot of auctions, do a lot of observing, and do all your homework going into it?
Well, there are people who do this probably full-time, and I think that's almost what it takes. You've got to go to many, many, many of these auctions. You got to do a lot of due diligence up front, really know your numbers. I mean, you got to go in and quickly figure out what's it going to take to make this property work. Can it be done? Absolutely. Is it easy? Certainly not. And I think unless you really dedicate yourself to this approach, you're going to have a hard time making it work.
But on the flip side, it'll make casino gambling seem very boring afterwards. Just throw your hand up, $300,000, $400,000, no big deal.
Exactly,
all
all
sets
in.
the bar high. It's got to be a lot of fun if you do it and do it well. Eldad Moraru of Long and Foster, thank you as always for joining us, and as always, you can find more at WTOP.com.